Hey friends, Dawn here, welcoming you to the Soul Goals podcast and year number 3. This year, we are diving into expanding our perspectives, challenging our belief systems, and working the mental and emotional muscles of our souls. Though still all about growth and connection, this year finds opportunities to hear from people in our communities that have walked a path that might be different from our own, but that ultimately present us with the chance to look at a subject in a different light and learn other ways we could approach challenges in our own world. Let's get to it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Goals podcast. I'm Dawn, and I am so glad you're joining in today. My friend Jim Morris is in the virtual video house today. Welcome, Jim Morris, to the show. So glad you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a positive moment for me to be able to share and spend time with you and your audience and listeners. So I'm grateful to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I met you at a networking event, which is amazing because I just want to intro a little bit about what I feel about you. When you meet somebody and they have that energy with them, it's just kind of like it just exudes into the room. And I was like, when I saw you, I was like, yeah, I need to talk to you. I need to know more about what it is that you do. And so when we met, I learned a little bit about you just in passing. But then as I dove in a little bit more, I was like, okay, I would call you a chain link. I'm going to call you Jim Chain Link Morris. I mean, there are people in your life that do that. Like you connect people. You are such a community builder. But more than that, like your business is Human Touch Publishing. You help people pull out books out of themselves. You're helping people author different pieces of their life, which is amazing. And you're also a keynote speaker. By the way, you've done a TED Talk along the way. So nothing to sneeze about there. You know your stuff. And you do these wonderful networking events called 7 minutes of impact. But the best thing that I love is it's weekly for the most part with your podcast, correct? Yeah.
Yep.
You're putting out these wonderful episodes. It's called The Impact Effect with Jim Morris. And what you're asking people are these wonderful questions. It's one specific question. I'll let you tell the audience what that is. And it's really invoking people to dive deeper into their why and what their mission is here, their purpose in life. And I wanted you to come on today and talk about the subject of curiosity, because I feel like that fits with that mission and that purpose and being curious about who we are, uncovering our story and really revealing those different points along the way. And when we bring that out, we heal, but we got to be curious and we got to dig it up. And I feel like Jim Chainlink Curious Morris would be your name. It's a long name.
I love it. It's very fitting.
Chainlink.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm glad you felt the energy. For me, I have an acronym called BRAVE when it comes to my core values. And the E in BRAVE stands for energetic. So it's great that I can show up and be myself and other people feel that, right? I believe that impact has no neutrality. You're either leaving a positive impact or you're leaving a negative impact. And I'm just grateful that you had a positive experience when we engaged and we get to do things like this, which are fun and helpful. And hopefully I can leave a positive impact on others in this episode today. So you had asked me about curiosity. And I first experienced curiosity when I started my sales journey in business development in the corporate world, 18 years ago. And what I learned in those moments was stay curious and ask questions. And, it's part of the sales script. And this is the question to ask. And if you don't do this, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to close the sale. You're not going to get the deal. And over time, what I realized was it's not just curiosity for me. It's compassionate curiosity. And when I start to flip that internal mindset, I call it moving the mind. When I start to move my mind around compassion and care, what comes up for me is a natural state of relationship building and brokering an opportunity to build deep human connection with someone. So whether
Mhm.
it's the sales process, whether it's just connecting with someone in person or on LinkedIn or, over a Zoom call, whatever the setting is, how can I show up with compassion? How can I ask the right questions opposed to any question or any type
Yeah.
of script?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's really important to me. And it took a lot of time to figure that out.
Mhm.
And one of the questions, just for the listeners, that I'd love to share, and it's in my book that's coming out called Connect or Die: How to Survive AI.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's brilliant.
I have a whole chapter on this called Compassionate Curiosity, but it starts with the question of asking someone what they need, not so
Mhm.
much what they do, right? Because
Ooh. Yeah.
if I can ask you, Don, what do you need in this moment right now? Then
Mhm.
it opens up a conversation for me to initially dive forward with a level of care that starts to broker the relationship to not be so generic, but
Mhm.
also gives you the platform to share what's important to you in the moment. What are you seeking? What dream are you following? Where are you trying to go? And what do you need to get there?
Right.
So that's a great question to open with, because it allows us to navigate down a road that I don't dictate, but
Mhm.
you can strategize through and give me some nuggets for me to be able to assist. And in a lot of cases, connect to you, right? Connect
Yes.
to you and connect you to others or resources or books or people I just think would be a great conversation to navigate that road.
Well, I feel like as you're talking, you're just exuding this passion for this connection. Everything that you're talking about, like the deep human connection, the compassionate curiosity, everything that goes along with it, right down to the point of, not being aligned with your initial job 18 years ago, right? And the script, and having to figure out how to deconstruct that script to figure out the path that really feels human, right? Really feels connectable with people. When you think about that, and I think about where you started, right? Because I do know a little bit about some of your past and how your challenging environment. I want to ask you, do you feel like that connection and that curiosity is accessible to all of us, or is it something that you have had to work through in the process of tough times, or you've been given this wonderful gift, or is it something that is, think about like a bicep curl, like a muscle? Like, do we have to exercise it? And how hard is that for people to be vulnerable enough to respond to the question, what do you need versus what do you do?
I,
That's a vulnerable question right there.
It is, and I love your question because it's very powerful to think about people and different scenarios they grew up in, or different times and different seasons or journeys. And I do believe that it is a muscle that you have to continue to work.
Mhm.
It's a skill. In my book, I talk about charisma, and I think some people are born with it, but I think there's always an opportunity to grow with it. So, practicing to get better, practicing to grow is important in anything we do, whether it's a sport, whether it's I want to read more words per minute when I read a book, whether it's engaging in real life or virtual. Those are skills that we need to continue to curate.
Right.
And for me, it was very awkward to ask that question the first time. And when I teach this from stage or in a workshop, people always ask me, Jim, you're asking me to ask someone, what do they need? You're asking me to skip, the Ford method, right? Where a lot of
Mhm.
people use Ford. When you meet someone, talk to them about F, family, O, occupation, R, right? And you get that recreation. What do they like doing? What vacations? Things like that. And then D is their dreams. And I make this funny comment like, go right for the D,
Yeah.
right? Go right
Yes.
for the D, because um, all that stuff will come up. All that
Mhm.
stuff will fill in the gaps of awkward conversation, or you'll start to get a better sense. But if someone can share their dream, if someone can share
Mhm.
where they want to go, how awesome is it if you can be one run on their ladder to help them climb higher and higher towards that? So
Mhm.
a lot of people, like I was saying in those workshops or from stage in the Q&A, or, after when I'm at the table and people want to connect deeper and have follow-up questions, they say, Jim, but that's so awkward. And I always revert back to the same statement. One, frame it, right?
Mhm.
So the pre-frame before you ask that question is extremely important. And then
Right.
two, practice it. So I'll give you an example. If someone in the is listening and they're like, all right, Jim, you're asking people you don't know, what do they need, what their dreams are. Like, this is crazy to me. I can never do this,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like, Jim, you can do it, but I can't.
Mm,
Pre-frame it and use me as an excuse, right?
right.
So you're at a networking event and you're like, hey, how are you? And they're like, hey, how are you? I'm Jim. Oh, I'm, Don. And then you're going to ask this question, say, you know what? I was listening to this podcast, and this guy, Jim Morris, was telling me how powerful it is to ask someone what they need instead of what they do. And I'm just testing it out. I'm just trying it. Would it be okay if I asked you, like, what do you need? How can I help you? Where do you want to go? What are your dreams?
That's
When you
brilliant. Yeah.
reframe that, you're now removing the internal incongruence or stress off of
Mhm.
you, and you're pushing it to Jim Morris, right? Or you can push it to a coworker. You can have a networking buddy. You can even say, hey, I've been challenged to ask this question, and it sometimes comes off awkward, right?
Yeah.
Like, you owning the reality around the scenario, knowing that it's unique, knowing that it's different,
Yeah.
and addressing it on the front end. People aren't thinking about judging you when you ask that question. You're thinking about judging yourself,
Ooh, I'm so
right?
glad you said that. Yeah, had a conversation last week with somebody about that. We are thinking more about what we are going through rather than or the person that we're talking to. Like if we have an awkward interaction, right? We are concerned more about what would they think we are like what we think they're going to think about us. That sounds so crazy. But you know what I'm saying, right? Instead of knowing that we're all just consumed with what we're, oh my gosh, I'm worried, I'm scared, I'm hesitant. And I love what you said about the reframing. The reframing is such a vital piece in so many different therapies along the way in terms of giving the story a different look. It doesn't decrease your story, but it just changes your perspective. It's like I told a client the other day, there's a Jenga puzzle in the middle of the table and you're sitting there staring at it and trying to figure out how to make it work. But what if you got up and you went to the table, went to the chair on the other side of the table and looked at it from a different perspective? The story's still there, but you might see, oh, there's a piece there I hadn't even thought about. So you're giving people permission to step outside of their comfort zones, to change their perspective, and to be curious about other people, which ultimately connects them. Totally.
Let's
Yeah.
go. Totally. Let's
Let's go.
go. I
Let's go.
love
Arm
it.
pump. Let's go.
I
Well,
love
and
it.
I also love the fact that you're talking about you have to work on it. It's not a given. Being curious, diving in and being vulnerable about your work is it's not always easy and it can be awkward. Like you said, I love what you talked about using, hey, I heard this guy, Jim Morris, and he was challenging me to do this. So I'm going to do this. And just getting that out of the way, right? Giving people permission to really do something completely different. But you
Totally.
have to also practice it. Have to practice it. Were you always like this charisma you're talking about that you're writing about in your book as well? I mean, has this always been something inside of you, even from where you were little and when you came from?
I don't think so. I think, growing up and having parents that, we lived a great life, and my parents taught me morals and ethics. But, my dad fell off a telephone pole at work and broke his knees. A couple months later, my mom had half her lung removed through cancer, and they were both prescribed OxyContin.
Oh,
So going through life where your parents, everything feels good and is normal and you're connected, and then moving through that season of addiction and losing your house and losing the pool and moving 7 times before you were 18, And going through disconnection had forced me to be in a position where I had been very disconnected. And the only thing to survive, the only thing to move through those moments was to find new connection,
Mhm.
right? When your parents are there all the time and they're supporting you and they're involved in your life, and then they're not, you now have to find someone that you can connect with on a deep level. So for me specifically, I experienced a lot of early on connection, and then I experienced disconnection, and I've watched what disconnection can do.
Yeah.
So coming out of that, making a lot of poor decisions, navigating life, moving through the trauma, right? Not addressing it, drinking
Mm.
alcohol all the time, escaping, smoking marijuana, right? Like doing
Mhm.
all those things in my late teens, in my 20s, I was hiding. I was not connected. I was disassociating.
Mm. Mhm.
And for me, I had to really go back and do the work of connection. And through that process, what I realized and what my TED Talk is on, it was someone, not something, that was the catalyst for me to follow my dreams.
Yeah.
And without having a relationship or going through life without that connection, I know how that feels. And I know how that hurts. And I know that in today's day and age, the Surgeon General now calls loneliness a disease,
Yeah.
right? And it can take years off your life. So I look at all these facts, the health centers, the science behind it, the biological perspective, my own experiences, talking to so many people, doing my podcast, hundreds of episodes, after I speak on stage, getting deep in people's stories as we help them create, write, and publish their book, that this is a through line that a lot of people have experienced.
Mhm.
And it takes work. You actually have to care to build relationships. You actually have to want to. Now, could you say that I had a little bit of higher EQ maybe than some other people early on? Maybe. But the reason why my EQ is at the highest it is today is because I've done the work. I've put
Right.
myself in the groups. I've made great friends with body language experts,
Mhm.
facial decoding experts,
Mhm.
conscious and unconscious communication experts. I've put myself in those networks. I've paid to have some of those experts on my stage at some of my events. I've jumped into masterminds that I couldn't afford because I
Mhm.
felt the connection and alignment of the skill that I wanted to grow. So
Yes.
it's been
Yes.
an investment of energy. It's been an investment of time. It's been an investment financially. But when it's all said and done, and when I'm older, I think I'm going to live to 130, by the way.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. I like that.
but when I'm older and I think back of all the things, and I think back of all my experiences and the memories and the micro miracle moments and the
Mm.
big juicy satisfying moments and the hardships and the struggles and the seasons that, you know just a couple years ago I was rolling change crying at my kitchen table trying to afford diapers after two massive business failures and financial devastation. When I think back of all those moments, it was never something that got me through those. It was someone. And before I take my last breath, I want to think about those people, not necessarily the large language model I created with proprietary AI technology within my company. It's not going to be the, book I wrote, but it's going to be the person who called, texted, or DM'd me about the vulnerability I shared so they could assess, analyze, and move through some of the scenarios that were relatable in my book.
Yeah.
It's the text message I got yesterday from a gentleman who had hurt his arm in his job and was fired 2 weeks later and was in a position where he didn't know what he was going to do. And he just got a job offer more than he expected financially, the perfect job. And he texted me and said, dude, Thank you so much for pushing me to go find the job I want, not the job I want to settle for. Thank you for helping
Mm,
my perspective change. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for allowing me to help you in your company and advising me on this interim position to take so I can keep the money flowing and be in a great state. And my nervous system is not in panic. So I can
mm.
show up and interview at a great level and go chase and grab and get the job that I want and always wanted. Those are the text messages. Those are the relationships. Those are the conversations that now have started to attract to me because I've done the work. I've done the practice. I've done the studying on how to connect, how to be deep, how to engage.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of work. And
Yeah.
my challenge to your listeners are anything in life that you want that gives back to you at such a high level takes practice, time, energy, and an investment. So if
Yes.
this is what you want, go do that. All right.
Absolutely. Well, what I hear you saying is that connection can really create that survival. That connection can really create that help and that compassion, and that when we're investing through questioning and through that curiosity, what a gift we are giving to other people. What a gift we are investing in. And don't go take it another level too. When you stay curious enough with other people and you hope and you invest in the way you do, then it just totally gives them permission to be themselves, and it gives them a permission to be open in such a beautiful way.
Totally. Totally. And I would just to touch a little bit here, if I may, on vulnerability,
Mhm.
you know, you've got to understand what people can receive when you're vulnerable. Sometimes in an example, I was talking to a client the other day, and it was, Mother's Day, and they were writing his book. It comes out in a couple weeks, and he was, asking Mel Robbins' husband to write the blurb on the back. And this was a big moment for him, right? He's like,
Mhm.
Chris Robbins is going to write the blurb on the back of my first book. And he had sent him an email, right? And he's busy, and he had followed up, and he finally said yes, and kudos to you and your vulnerability, and the first two chapters you sent me are amazing, and this is so hard, and I'm so excited for you. I will gladly write a blurb for you.
Yeah.
So this client was so excited, right? And he called a friend of his, and his friend just did a bunch of trauma dumping during the call,
Mm.
and it just wasn't the right moment for his friend to be so deep in that their vulnerability, because he was calling with excitement and energy and just wanted a quick couple minute call, but that person didn't know how to read it, and they were just dumping all this trauma. It was like an hour call.
Yeah.
So you've got to understand if people and how they're perceiving your vulnerability, and when to go deeper or when to pull back, right? And I say this in my book. It's not, who's your confidant, who's your allies, and who's your acquaintances. And, in that moment, that person wanted him to be their confidant, and they wanted to dump and talk through the trauma, but that wasn't the relationship they had. They were more friends, allies, business related. So understanding the level of vulnerability you give and can take is super important when it comes to that topic. And then also going back to the confidants, the allies, and the acquaintances, and I've done this, and I can share a quick story. If someone's an acquaintance and you are way too vulnerable with them, it can really hurt you.
Yeah. I've had that experience. Yeah, for
So
sure.
you've got to really understand what circle are they in within your life,
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
how are you going to engage with them? Because
Mhm.
I had an acquaintance, and I was talking about my financial situation. I was talking about the pressures I had in life, about struggling through some of the scenarios I was in. I was talking about how we had lost, a child recently, and I didn't know if I wanted to continue having children because we almost lost my wife, right, in the process. And that was too much for them, and our relationship wasn't deep enough, and they leveraged against me. They took advantage of me. They tried to grab the last bits of money I had because I was working with them. And instead of, being a friend who says, "Hey, let's pause this," they just hit me with this invoice because they were trying to grab the last chunk of cash I had, knowing that these financial situations were happening. And then they took some of that information and shared it with people that I didn't want it shared with. So your spectrum of
Mhm.
vulnerability, how much you give, how much and what you give, you
Yeah.
need to have a great understanding of where the relationship really sits. And
Mhm.
is this the right person to go deep with? Is this the right person to skim over? Is this the right person just to dabble just a little bit and move back to your natural state or your natural or consistent level of conversation? So I've had to learn those lessons pretty hard, but when everybody says just be vulnerable and share it all, I would 100% disagree, because you've got to throttle some certain things back, because vulnerable information can, and in some cases will, be used against you to hurt you further.
Right, right. And I will say, you can only people can only meet you where they've met themselves,
Yes.
right? And scaling inside of the relationship is such a big deal. Reading that relationship and knowing what the capacity to be able to hold the information is super important. How do you discern that? Yeah, it's a level of discernment. How do you do that? That's the thing. If we're talking about connecting and staying curious about what another person is bringing to the table, how do you discern that level of discernment basically that you're just speaking of? It's because being vulnerable really does create a connection, but we're also talking about safety here too. Like the level of safety is indicative of where you're going to go. And if you go too far, what I hear you saying is that there's a lot of harm that can come from us trying to reach out and connect and really heal and needing that support without that level of discernment. So what it sounds to me like you have had to learn through your experiences is, and all of us, we were learning through our experiences, right? I mean, I could list a multitude of different ones that I've had where I've been like, oh gosh, yeah, probably shouldn't have went that way. Probably could have been better in this way. It's my therapist used to call it the shoulda, woulda, couldas, right? I should have done this. If I would have done this, yeah, I could have done this. And it just creates regret. But the idea is to bring the focus back to what it is that you can discern, what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you understand about yourself and where you are and the level of capacity that you can bring into the friendship and where they're meeting you for where they're at. And it evolves. It evolves every season. Like the friend you're talking about could be something in a different, or the gentleman that was talking about the book, right? The blurb on the back by Chris Robbins. It could be different 6 months from now because they could be in a completely different situation. So it's not a discounting, but it's a real, I just keep going back to discernment. It's a discernment about where we are. And you
Totally.
got to stay curious. You got to ask questions. You got to really, and let's take it to another level. You got to ask questions of yourself, not just the
Yes.
people outside of you. So tell
Yes.
me a little bit about what that process is for you. When you're unpacking something with somebody, when you're writing a keynote speech, when you're talking to a group, when you're talking with your authors that you have within your company that you're helping assist in their writing process. I mean, do you have a process where you go through your checkpoint of your own stuff before you get into theirs?
It's a very in the moment type of experience for me. So when I think about the discernment, when I think about, what makes sense to share, what doesn't make sense to share, I start to think about what would the outcome look like if I did or if I didn't, right? So that futuristic approach is probably the first thought. The second
Mhm.
thought is I am reading the body language as I'm speaking. And when I may share something, I'm looking to see if I should go deeper, if it's making
Mhm.
the person feel uncomfortable. Is the energy transfer feel real? Or does
Yeah.
it feel like they're plotting or they're feeling a negative emotion, right?
Yeah.
Um, the last thing I would say is when it comes to who or what type of relationship I have with someone when I want to be vulnerable and go deep and share some of these things relates back to my prior experiences with them. Are they someone who consistently talks about people? Or are they
Mm,
someone who consistently talks about ideas? Or are they someone who consistently talks about where they want to go and the positive impact they want to bring, right? So if I'm engaging with someone and it's been only a couple times that I've known them and they want to talk about, hey, I want to go build this business or do this thing because I'm going to make all this money, I'm going to do all the, well, now I know where their impact lies. It's more financial rather than community based or
mhm.
helping people in need or showing up and supporting them. So maybe I wouldn't be so vulnerable about my struggles with someone who's focused on just making money, right? And that
Right.
could be in a business sense. Now,
Right.
when it comes to someone who is engaging in conversation and they're talking about, this person did this and that, and or they're asking me questions about people consistently, right? So
Mhm.
for instance, if I have a relationship with someone and I know them and we're friends and we've done business or we've known each other for an amount of time and they come to me and they're like, Jim, this guy, Rob, do you know him? Have you had an experience with him? Like,
Mhm.
that's fine, right? They're trusting me based on the depth of our relationship because they've got some kind of gut instinct or they're worried. So I want to show up for a friend. I want to speak my truth. Now, I'm not running dirt on their name and I'm not giving them or telling them what to do, but if someone's
Mhm.
going to ask me what my experience was, there's a reason for it. So I typically flip it back and say, well, if you're asking me to tell you my experience, I think you already know the answer,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Now,
Yeah.
if it's someone who's saying this about this person and that and trying to extract the details from me and my experience with the other person, then I'm probably not going to share. I'm probably not going to be super vulnerable because what stops them from now taking what I just was vulnerable about and to another relationship, to another conversation? So
Yeah.
I start to read people. I start to look at them. What is our conversations typically about? And
Yeah.
what category or circle do they fall in my life? Are they a confidant for me? Are they an ally or are they just an acquaintance?
Right.
So
Right.
having that depth and knowing who I'm speaking to or sharing with allows me to broker what level of vulnerability in that moment I want to share.
Yeah, and it's about real connection and real relationships versus transactional. I think we could go down a huge rabbit hole. That could be another podcast episode right there. Yeah,
Totally.
real or transactional relationships. But I mean, like if what I hear you saying is you're paying attention to the human behaviors. You're staying actively curious about what it is that's in front of you and how you're going to address it based on where you're coming from and based on what that I'll use the word transaction, but in a different way. That interchange is going to create most positively for the people impacted, yourself as well. I mean, do you feel like there's a piece of I'm interested to get your take on this. Selfish versus selfless when you have an interaction of that nature, when you're trying to help someone, because I've always believed that when I'm feeling crappy, when I'm feeling shitty and things are just like, woof, and I'm stuck, the best thing for me to get out of my head and out of my way is to go and help someone else. It's going to volunteer. It's going to do something outside, getting out of my own way. Right. And it doesn't negate it and it doesn't make it go away. It just pushes it over here. And then when I come back, it's like the Jenga puzzle on the table, right? I can maybe look at it a little bit differently. I have a different feeling about what it is that I'm now trying to navigate. But give me your input on selfish versus selfless, because I feel like that we have to be a bit selfish with our energy and our capacity to be able to be selfless in the community that we're serving, and specifically the people that you're helping. If we think about the authors that you're working with, and we think about the people that you are addressing when you're speaking, and the networking events that you're doing, that the connection that all involves, there's you got to fill your tank first. So how important is it, do you feel, to be that fill your tank versus being empty? Obviously, we've all heard the whole the oxygen mask, you got to put yours. It's that's such an old cliche, but it's
Yeah.
so freaking true, right? You got to take care of yourself first. But I'm interested to get your take on that. And I'm curious about your take. See what I did there? I'm curious about
I
your
love
take.
it. I love it. Um, I know we're probably wrapping up here in a second, so I'll try to be quick. But first thing I want to mention is your listeners rewind back to what Dawn just said about in those moments where she feels crappy or she's struggling and she wants to go help someone, because I believe that is the most powerful thing you can do to move your mind from negativity to positivity. And
Amen.
I love that. And I had a mentor, and it's in my book, Connect or Die. I talk about this, but I had a mentor when I was in that season that I shared with you, financially broke. I do believe broke is a season, poor is a mindset. So when I was
Ooh,
financially broke, um, a mentor of mine said, Jim, wake up every day and love on 5 people. Text them, call them, ask how you can help them. Love on 5 people. And I did that for about a week. And then I made $22,000 the week later. And
Jim.
that may not happen every single time you do it, but it puts you in a completely different mindset. It puts you in a completely different frame. Your nervous system is more aligned. Your cognitive function starts to enhance because you feel good internally. You feel good
Yes.
internally. So your mind's moving. You're feeling better. You want to go make the call because now you want to help someone. You want to follow up with the proposal you sent or the sales agreement that hasn't been signed yet. You want to
Mhm.
do those things because you've already ate the frog that day. You woke up, you loved on people, you helped them, you were compassionate, you actually cared about them. So
Mhm.
that's what you did. You already did a good service. You're in a good mood. And it's things like, hey, I saw on your Facebook that you just had a vacation and I hope Jamaica was amazing. What did it smell like when you were eating those jerk wings you posted? Right? Like, I bet you that
Yeah, I
kitchen
wanna
was
hear it.
amazing. Right? And it doesn't need to be here's an introduction that changes your life, but you're loving on people, you're engaging with people, and you're doing it in a way where you actually care. So they're responding. And now you start to broker a real conversation. And then you start to continue to ask those questions, and they start to ask what you need. How are
Yeah,
you? What vacations did you go on? Where have you been to Jamaica? It starts to broker a full back and forth. So
right.
that is so important what you said, Dawn. That is like changed my life.
Yeah,
And I don't say those words lightly when I say change my life, because that was a very hard period of time for me.
yeah.
So that would be the first thing. The second thing is I've struggled with trying to help everybody in the world. And I've put myself in a position where I wasn't being helped. I wasn't actually growing. It just felt good to help someone, but internally I was suffering. Internally, I wasn't living up to being at my highest capacity, which in turn would help someone more when I'm at my highest capacity.
Right.
So I've done those things. And yes, it's cliche. You can't pour from a half empty cup, right? Like, but it's
Mhm.
so true. And what I started to realize was I only want to be in win-win situations,
Mhm.
meaning I don't need to win every time. I don't need to only engage if I'm going to win. But if I engage and I help you and you come to me with a business problem and I give you a strategy and it starts to work, and then a month later, 2 months later, you come to me again, you need something, and you come to me again and you need something, and you come to me again and you need something. At what point am I going to realize that I am being used? At
Yeah.
what point am I going to realize that you are now an energy vampire? You're sucking the energy out of me because I need to exert it. I want to be Jim. I want to be energetic. I want to love on you. And
Mhm.
it's now within a window and a frame of at what point am I always going to pour it out and never get energy back? And it doesn't mean you need to send me a referral. It doesn't mean you need to, give me a business strategy. What it means is, are you actually loving on me or are you
Yeah.
using me?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who don't understand that. And I don't think it's their fault. But if
Yes.
you let
Correct.
it
Agreed.
happen, it now becomes your fault
Your fault.
that you're letting it
Yes.
occur. And you
Yeah.
don't need to be mean to people. You don't need to, talk trash or run dirt on their name. You don't need to do any of that. What I
Mhm.
would invite you to do in those moments is just have an honest conversation and lead with love, right?
Yeah.
Hey, every time you reach out to me, it's to speak at my events. It's to ask me a business question. It's to ask me to read a couple chapters of your book,
Mhm.
right? And I want to help you, but I feel like our relationship would flourish at a higher level if it was more about our relationship, not about what I could do for you in the moments that you always need me to do something. And I'll
Mhm.
tell you what, Don, those are hard conversations. They are.
Right.
But more than never, more than not, when I've had those conversations, people are like, I can totally understand that. I can totally see how I'm doing that. I
Yeah.
wasn't even aware. I apologize.
Mhm.
Um, and then our relationship grows.
Right.
And it actually gets to a level where we are helping each other, where there is a win-win situation.
Yeah.
So, I know I probably went a little longer on that, and we probably need to wrap up, but I just wanted to share that because it's been a very powerful transformation for me,
Yes.
and those are hard conversations, but I promise you, when you do the hard thing and you do it faster than just pondering or stewing on it, um, you move to the other side and you get through much faster. And you're
Right.
gonna think people are gonna say, "Screw you," or, "You're terrible," and they're gonna push back. Most of the time they don't. They just didn't even
Mhm.
realize it was even happening.
Well, and you said the key is to lead with love. If you're leading with love and integrity, you really have nothing to lose because you're doing it with the most loving, discerning piece of yourself. And when that happens, they're either going to receive it or not. And the benefit is for everybody involved. It really is. I love what you said. Broke is a season, poor is a mindset. Broke is a season, poor is a mindset. The mindset is such a big deal. And staying curious about what it is that you need, the interactions and the connections that you're trying to build is so, so important. I feel it's been my experience. And I also want to say the nervous system, you brought this up a couple different times. Big deal. Big, 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 big deal. If you are in this fight or flight constantly, you cannot be productive as a human being, and your connection to other people is going to be extremely shallow. It's not going to be as deeply rooted as it potentially could be, because when your central nervous system is out of whack, you're not being your fullest self. And I love what you said also about the win-win. It's a win-win. You want those relationships to be win-win. You want everybody, yourself included. You want those connections to be a positive for everybody involved. That's the bottom line. It's the bottom line. Tell me what a curious life looks like to you right now, in this day, in this season, and maybe in this moment that we're talking today.
A curious life looks for me like something where I can engage with different groups, networks, cultures, people, that I may not have in the past, right? I
Mm,
can be open to understanding why someone believes what they believe and being completely okay with acquiring new information and then changing my opinion based on new acquired information. I used to live a life, I believe, where I thought I was right, or I had an ego, or I've just experienced something in such a depth of a way that I thought it might have been the only way. So for
yeah.
me, I want to be more open, and I believe I am being more open to doing things I normally wouldn't do, asking questions or questioning someone's statements to find the depth behind it or the reasoning,
Mhm.
to then open my mind to then maybe make a decision of, I totally see that side, I totally understand that, but I still believe what I believe, or to cross out the line in the sand I wrote years ago and change it and move it based on new information that hasn't come into my world in my life. So
Yeah.
I would recommend being open. And also, I would recommend not having to actually agree with that new information and standing in what you believe.
That's beautiful. And it's something I think that we don't go to very often. You talked about the ego. Ego is such a big, that's a whole other podcast episode. We can totally go down that rabbit hole all day long. But what you're speaking about is evolving. You know what I'm saying? It's what our souls are here to do. We're here to learn. We're here to pull from other people. We're here to feed other people. And that give and take is so beneficial and so crucial for all of our well beings on every level. And connection is the biggest part of it. But you got to ask the questions. You got to be open to having those discussions. I again just love what you said, leading with love. And when you do that from a place of honesty and integrity, things just seem to fall in line. Yeah. Oh gosh, guys, go out and love on 5 people every day this next week. I mean, there you go. Let's challenge that one. Let's do that. It's
Yeah.
so great. So great. Okay, tell me when your book is going to be out and the title of it so we all are on alert for it.
Yeah, it's launching right around this episode. So
Okay.
it'll probably be out. Feel free to grab it. It's called Connect or Die: How to Survive AI. You can grab it on Amazon. You can, connectorddiebook.com, therealjimmorris.com. We'll have a link there. It is a culmination of my experiences, some of the hardships I navigated, some of the crazy situations I was in as a young teen and, in my 20s. There's a lot of truth, there's a lot of vulnerability, but I believe that that's the best way to share Jim Morris's truth and how I built a lot of these skills and how to connect on a deep level. It's not your typical book where it's these fluffy stories. I mean, it's called Connect or Die for a reason. There was moments where not only did I think I was going to die, but there was moments where I also thought about taking my own life. And it's the connection, it's the people, it's the scenarios that we can walk through and then use for a positive way. So I would love to invite you to check it out. And thank you, Dawn, for having me today. I'm so grateful. You're such a great interviewer, and
Oh,
I'm really
thank you.
excited to get this to your listeners. So thank you.
Oh, well, I feel the same. You're a passionate individual, and I love hearing. I love the sharing, and the vulnerability is the biggest piece that is so integral. It's allowing people to be who they are. It's allowing people to see who you are in the same vein, in the same side of the coin. And you know what? We teach what we know. So thank you for teaching what you know, teaching where you've been and where you are going, because your experience is vulnerable, it's valuable, and it has everything in between. It's so good. Everybody check out Impact Effect with Jim Morris. Amazing podcast, so brilliant every week. Let's listen to that question that you're going to ask folks, and we're not going to even tell you what it is. I just want everybody to go tune into it because it is the most it's brilliant. I said it earlier. It's brilliant. I love it. It invokes curiosity, and it just really it dives into the human spirit in a really beautiful way. So thank you for that, and I love it. So great talking to you today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, Jim, and a great evening, and I can't wait till your next networking event.
Let's go. Thank you, Don. Have a great day as well.
I will.